Hello, everypony, and welcome to episode 14 of the Pony Talk podcast. I am your host, as always, Dashi101, and today, guys, we have a very exciting episode, yet emotional. So two different emotion things kind of going on here. We have happy and we have sad, but really good episode, but very sad at the same time. Yeah, but I did want to just kind of mention this a little bit. The day you guys are seeing this, BronyCon. It's BronyCon weekend, guys, so it's going on right now, and the day you're watching this, which is Sunday, is the last day of the convention, so some of you may be there watching this, so hello, how's it going? Let me know in the comments below what you guys are doing there, or what you did so far. I would like to know because, you know, last time I went, I had a blast. It was amazing, and I really want to go again. I know a lot of you have been questioning me if I was going this year, and I said no. But yeah, if you are there, let me know about it. I kind of like to know. So yeah, just wanted to get that out of the way. But we have a very exciting episode to cover, and episode 13 we have. Okay, episode 13 of season 7, The Perfect Pear. As the fruit, as a, not pear, but it's supposed to mean that, but it's actually the fruit. But you guys get it. You get the subject here. Anyway, enough with that. Too much confusion. My gosh, if I can speak. So, I'm going to jump right into the episode, and let's get this podcast started. So, we first start off at Sugar Cube Corner, outside of the town, by Sugar Cube Corner, and we see Apple Bloom. And she's kind of carrying on with her normal day, but she sees a crowd of townsfolks, or towns-ponies, kind of crowding around this one booth, kind of just money everywhere, to this one elderly pony, who we have no idea who this is, but she kind of trots over there and sees that he's selling jam. Pear jam, to be precise. Anyway, Apple Bloom kind of squeezes in, and the elderly pony hands her this jam on, I don't know if it was like a donut or something like that, I'm not sure. But anyway, Apple Bloom tries it and says, "Oh my god, wow, this is delicious." And he's like, "Thank you." He's like, "I'm Grand Pear." He's like, "Nice to meet you." And Apple Bloom's like, "Well, I'm Apple Bloom, and I welcome you to Ponyville." Then, one of the ponies says, "Well, he's been here before. He just moved, and now he's back. He's been here. He's been in Ponyville before. They used to have a pear farm here." And she's like, "Wow, really?" And he's like, "Yeah, we did." So, Apple Bloom asks, "How much for the pear jam?" Kind of pushes it to the side to her and says it's on the house. And she's like, "Wow, really?" She's like, "Awesome." And she's like, "Have a good day." And he's like, "Yes, thank you." And he goes back to selling, and Apple Bloom trots back to Sweet Apple Acres with a very interesting little gimmick. So, right on time for breakfast, Applejack welcomes Apple Bloom back and says, "You're just on time for breakfast." And Apple Bloom says, "Awesome, because I got something really amazing that will go perfect with our pancakes." Pulls out from her saddle, or her little bag, the pear jam. Applejack and Big Mac look at it like it's just something horrible, which in their eyes it is. So they go grab it from her, break a board or floorboard off, and they start digging underground. And Big Mac, of course, joins in too, because he's against this jam for some silly reason. And Apple Bloom's very confused, like, "Why are you burying this?" They throw the jam in, start burying it up with the dirt, And Applejack's like, the pears and the apples have this huge fight right now. It's not good. We need to hide this from Granny. And Applejack's like, why? And Granny, of course, walks in and says, what the hey's going on? And Applejack kind of covers up and says, Granny, we can't decide what topping we need to add to our pancakes. And Applejack shows her a couple of choices. Granny, of course, hits one off, saying, no, that's not good. Sorry if you hear the emergency vehicles. I don't know. Every time I want to record or do a podcast or something, an emergency vehicle has to come by. But then again, I do live on a busy highway, so yeah, or a busy road, whatever you want to say. But yeah. Anyway, going back to our story, Granny's like, yeah, use this one. And she's like, okay, thanks. What Applejack says. And Granny carries on with her normal day, goes outside, and Apple Bloom then says, okay, what's the big deal? She's like, okay, the pears and the apples are, I guess, not nice to each other. They're against each other, in a way. Why? So, and Applejack's like, because, and she's like, huh. She's like, you know what, Sugar Cube? I have no idea. She looks at Big Mac and says, Big Mac? And Big Mac just goes, He just shrugs his shoulders, saying, I have no idea. So, Applejack points out, you know what? We need to go see some pony. And they bring up, well, Goldie Delicious, the historian of the Apple family. So they trot to her house and knock on the door, and everything literally comes out of her house. I think some of them came through the window, but I was mostly seeing the door. And there's a huge mountain of just I can't say the word. Basically, photo albums, different antiques and stuff. I'm guessing relating to the apples, of course, because the Apple family's historian. So, yeah. And she comes out of that pile, and a bunch of cats, too, let me mind you. And a tiger, because why not? Anyway, she's like, it's you guys, Big Mac, Applejack, and Apple Bloom. What brings you three here? And Applejack kind of is like, well, we kind of want to know about our family. And Goldie Delicious kind of like, oh. And she's like, what sort of happened between the pears and the apples? And this is where she's like, well, I can tell you as much as I know. So, we go into the story, guys. So, yay, story time. I can't wait. So, we begin by, in Ponyville, back kind of where we started from the beginning of the episode, where, by Sugar Cube Corner, sorta. But we're in Ponyville Square, I believe. And Granny Smith is at the Apple, booth. And Pear. Now, Pear is, well, the pony that we met in the beginning. And of course, he's selling pears. And both of them, both Granny and Pear, are talking, but they're kind of fighting at the same time. And Pear makes a smart remark, and because Granny said, "Oh, apples are better than pears," and Pear makes a smart remark and says, "Pears are just delicious, but apples are too sour," kind of like your expression right now. And this starts up a whole thing, and they've been doing this all throughout while they're selling their fruits. So, going on with the story, they basically have two farms. There's a fence splitting both of these farms. We have the apple farm, Sweet Apple Acres, of course. And then we have the pear farm, which I don't really think has a name. But yeah, it's there. So, we have Granny by a tree reading to the tree because it helps make the apples grow better and a lot more sweeter, according to the Apple family. And Pear kind of trots up, and sees Granny doing this, and he's like, grabs huge blankets, puts them over his pear trees, and he's like, well, this is going to keep them warm. And Granny kind of gives him a disgusting look, and I believe she goes in for the night, and so does he. The next day, they're picking pears and apples, and all of them are looking nasty at each other, both of the family sides, except this is where it comes interesting, guys. Two fillies, one on the pear side, one on the apple side. So we get introduced into Light Mac and Pear Butter. So they're kind of sitting, talking to each other, and Light Mac kind of looks over to Pear Butter and says, well, I'm not really supposed to talk to you. Pear Butter says, she goes, well, yeah, I'm not supposed to talk to you either. And she's like, but, you know, I kind of like it. You seem cool. And they start up the conversation, and I guess they start becoming friends, and then really good friends, because when Applejack hears these names, she goes on, wait, those sound a lot like our parents. And Goldie Delicious goes on and says, yes, those are your parents. And the whole Apple family that's there is shocked, and they're like, tell us more about the story. And she goes on, I believe, with a little bit of their romantic story about them seeing each other and all that good stuff. But then she stops and says, well, that's all I really have for you guys. But I know a pony that will tell you more about the story. Go to Burnt Oak Stand in Ponyville. So, we return there. They say, thanks, Goldie, for that little bit of history there. And they go on with their day to the next pony. And Burnt Oak. And he's like, well, if it isn't the apples. He's like, what brings you to my booth? He's like, I know you're not here for any trees, because you have all the trees in Ponyville, basically. And Applejack kind of like, yeah, we do, but you're right, we're not here for that. She's like, we need to know about our parents. And this is where Burnt Oak kind of gets a little bit emotional and says, well, you came to the right pony. And they sit down and listen to his side, what he has to say. But the only pony he really knows about is Light Mac, because they were friends with each other. So he explains, well, I remember your dad basically wanting to race with me, and they have the giant plows, and they're on the farm. And he's like, but one thing that kind of disturbed me about your dad is he always had his eye on Pear Butter. And they kind of shows flashback, them racing. Light Mac gets distracted by Pear Butter, crashes through the fence into the garden, and ends up ramming into their silo. Now, this floods everything. And let me tell you, Grandpear is not happy about this. He walks out and goes, oh, he's like, what did you do, Pear Butter? Blames it all on her, and she's like, I didn't do anything. And he's like, likely story. And this is where Light Mac goes in and says, she's right. I was the one who did it. It was me. And Grandpear's like, well, you need to fix this. And he's like, I'll give you these certain amount of days, I believe he says. And so he says, yes, I'll fix the silo for you. And Pear kind of grabs Pear Butter and leads her to the next location I guess he wants her to work at, and says, come with me, we need to do this. And Light Mac winks at Pear Butter, and she does the same thing to him. And they kind of go on with Light Mac was there fixing the saddle for a long time, but Burnt Oak says he knows exactly why, because Pear Butter and Light Mac had a thing for each other. And he's like, well, it's obvious, it's your parents we're talking about. But he said this is where it gets interesting. Unfortunately, there was one day where your parents, he's like, well, they were sending letters and stuff. Well, it got ridiculous, and I guess it got Grandpear super upset that she came into Pear Butter's room saying, we're moving. And this is where Burnt Oak stops his story. He doesn't know anymore. And they're like, wait, we need to know. And he's like, hold on. He's like, I got another pony that will tell you the rest of the story, what happened. He's like, just go to Mare or the Ponyville Town Hall. And so they're like, all right. And they're like, thank you, Burnt Oak. And he's like, no problem, anytime. And he kind of sheds more tears, but wipes them away because he was happy. So we go to Mare, the Ponyville Town Hall pony, and she is there, I believe, organizing files, because she has huge file cabinets, like, they're huge. Anyway, we go over there, well, the Apple family goes over there, not we precisely, but kind of in a way. Anyway, go over there, and they ask her, we need to know about our mom. And, oh wait, no! It wasn't Mare. I totally messed that up. I'm sorry, guys. And Burnt Oak actually wasn't the one who said, about them moving. He sent them to Mrs. Cake. And this is where, Mrs. Cake in Sugar Cube Corner talks about, her mom. And tells her about her. And then she's like, well, and funny story, as Mrs. Cake goes on, she was actually the one to help me start baking. She was the one who taught me how to bake. And she's like, she also was the one who got me my cutie mark. So this brings up a whole different chain now. Crazy. And so, she flashes back to her younger self with Pear Butter. They're making cakes, sharing good times with each other. And, I believe this is where Mrs. Cake has her cutie mark and all that. And she just was so inspired. They made a lot of Pear different desserts and all those goods. And yeah, it was amazing. And she was like, well, one day I wanted to do something special for your mother. I decided to bake her something. So I did. But she was out in the middle with of the woods with, well, Bright Mac, your father. And anyway, she goes on saying, I saw both of them together. They were having like a little picnic or something like that. And she's kind of over here, Mrs. Cake is over here hiding in the bushes watching these two bond. And right before they were about to kiss, Mrs. Cake kind of like sits back not to disturb them or anything. Well, she unfortunately does that. She steps on a branch, makes sound, and Light Mac and Pear ask, who's there? And they see Mrs. Cake come out of the shadows saying, oh, it's just me. And Pear's like, it's only you. And she's like, good. And she's like, what are you doing here? And she shows her, well, I baked this for you. And she's like, oh, that's awesome. And she kind of says, will you tell No Pony? And Mrs. Cake gives her a nod, saying, I won't. And yeah, now then she goes into detail, Mrs. Cake goes into detail about Grandpear telling Pear Butter that they're moving. And this breaks Pear Butter's heart really badly. And she tells Little Mac that we can't, see each other really, because I'm going to be in, I think it was Vancouver? Yeah, Vancouver, I think. Vancouver or Vancouver. It was Vancouver, I think. Anyway, that's where, if you remember going back, all the way to the beginning, that's where Grand Mac actually explains to Apple Bloom, saying that's where I came from. And she's like, wow, that's awesome. And she's like, well, welcome back then. Anyway, off that subject, we go back, and this is where Mrs. K cuts off the story. Now we go to Mayor. She tells them, well, go see Mayor. That's how your mom and dad got married. And they're like, really? Wow. So, at Ponyville Town Hall, she's over here organizing her files, as I said before. And she goes on, tells them the story, saying, well, I was the one who got your parents married. And she's like, so this is what happened. She's like, we planned a secret wedding in the apple and pear farm area. Well, she's like, they had Mrs. Cake there and Burnt Oak, because both of those ponies were Burnt Oak was Light Max, Bright Mac. That's it. I'm sorry, guys. I'm starting to kind of lose myself now. But I'm doing good so far. So, anyway, go over there. And, yeah, Bright Mac friend, Burnt Oak. And then Pear Butter's friend, Mrs. Cake, of course. And they're over here, basically in the audience. And we have Mayor, who is, oh shoot. Oh yeah, the priest, basically, in this case. Or the pastor, whatever you want to call her. Basically, the person who does the whole shebang of the wedding. Gets them engaged. So, they do, to make it, I guess, a thing, official thing, Mayor has 2 seeds. One is an apple seed, and one of them's a pear seed. Gives it to both of them, one seed for Pear Butter, one seed for Bright Mac. I keep saying Light Mac, I don't know why. So, they do so, and they dig a hole, plant the seeds, and he said, well, there it is, it's official. And right about just before they were about to kiss, guess who shows up? Both Granny and Grandpa. So, and this is not good. They both ask, they kind of like come out of nowhere asking where both of them are, and both of them see both of them together, and of course it's bad. It's bad. They do not want these two together. And then Pear Butter comes out of nowhere and says, well, me and Light Mac, or Bright Mac, get engaged, we're engaged. And they're like, what are you talking about? This is crazy. And this is where, oh my god, Grandpa, I have the names written here, so I don't forget, because I'm doing good so far, but it's kind of hard. Anyway, Grandpa is like, well, I agree with Granny Smith here. This is the one thing I'll agree with her. What the heck are you guys doing together? And what are you talking about? You're engaged. There's no way. And he breaks up the party, says, come on, Pear Butter. We're going home and we're packing our bags for Vancouver. And she's like, no. Just puts her hoof down, and Bright Mac runs over to her, comforts her, and he's like, oh, are you saying that you don't want to go? And she's like, well, are you telling me to? And this is where every pony's like, and it gets dramatic. And then Grandpa comes and says, yes, I am. And that totally breaks the chain. Pear Butter has no sympathy for Grandpa. She's done, and she's like, you know what? She's like, I guess I'm an apple. And that totally breaks Grandpa's heart, and says, fine. He's like, go on. And of course, Light Mac is over here, or Bright Mac, sorry, hugging her. And then Granny kind of comes over and comforts her and smiles. And yeah, it's very sad and very emotional, and it was crazy. And well, now that they got the story, we go back to Mare and the Apple family there, and they're like, wow, this actually happened? This is crazy. We need to, kind of get Granny and Grandpa to kind of bond together, because this is not, we need to fix this. So they do so. They get Grandpa, and say, sorry. Well, Applebloom says, we're sorry, we forgive you. Gives Grandpa a hug, and he's like, well, I guess I'm your grandpa now. And it gets sweet. And then we go over to Granny, and they're like, well, we know the whole story about our parents. And Granny's like trying to hide it, like, oh, really? What are you talking about? And Grandpa comes up, and she's like, oh, well, if it isn't the old soured pear or something like that. And he's like, I'm sorry. He's like, I should have been more lenient and all this, it's not right of me for doing that to her. And Granny Smith apologizes too. And every pony gets together and hugs. And then the Applebloom's like, well, there's one other thing we need to show you. So they go over to the corner where they had the secret engagement, where the parents met and got married, were engaged. And they see that tree. The tree grew, and the tree is curled up with each other, and it makes a heart. An apple tree and a pear tree together, and it's beautiful. Both Granny and Grandpa basically tear. They look at each other, and they're like, I'm glad that we got together and we actually are friends now. And that's scene. And then it starts playing Pear Butter's song, which I did accidentally leave out on her guitar, because they were saying something about gifts. And yeah, it's crazy. So very, very emotional episode, guys. Oh my god. So much to say about this. As you could tell through this whole entire podcast, my mind was just spinning about a lot of stuff, basically. And it's absolutely crazy, but seriously, what do I think about this? As I said before, amazing, outstanding. This was a great episode. So, very, very emotional how all this happened. How Applejack's parents actually became an actual thing. The bond was so amazing and just so beautiful. I love it. So, very good storyline. And that is definitely an episode I will remember, and I think it's definitely one of my favorite episodes of the season. Yeah, I really don't have too much else to say, but getting that all off my mind and all that, yeah. Absolutely great, Hasbro. Amazing DHX. Wow, I'm really excited for the next episode. But I want to hear from you guys. What did you think about this episode? Did you love it? Did you think it was okay, or did you just not care at all? I think a lot of you, I know what your answer is going to be. There's a lot of emotions and feelings wrapped around this, and yes, this definitely was an emotional episode, and you guys can't deny it. You know that. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time watching this podcast, and future ones in the future. That's basically all I gotta say for this episode, guys. So, with that being said, thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, favorite, and don't forget to subscribe, guys. And more Pony Talk coming your way. So, as always, guys, we will see you in the next Pony Talk podcast, guys. Peace out. Bye!